This video will demonstrate the batch processing feature of mark tags. Batch processing is just a way of automating of reading in a data file, processing it, storing the results in a different file, and then reviewing the results. So what we'll be covering here on the topics, selection or verifying the auto marking settings, creating and editing batch files, running a batch process, and reviewing the batch results. So from your desktop, start mark tags. The very first thing that should always be done is opening up a project database. This is the source for mark tags and obtaining the list of tags that will be used in the batch process. So under setup tag information, we see here that we have a list of a total of 630 tags for this project, and all are selected for being used in marking. Also, when we open up the project database, the histogram in the lower left corner shows you our range of periods that we'll be looking at. And if you zoom in, the individual vertical lines represent the specific periods from our tag list in terms of what is the location for the data for that specific tag in the histogram. It's always a good idea to look at a data file that represents the files that you're going to be batch processing. Before we do that, let's go to File, Options, and this dialog box automates some file procedures whenever you open up a raw acoustic tag or RAT file. So we're going to have mark tags create a CAT file, which will store the auto marking results, as well as creating a bookmark file. Okay, so let's open up a raw file. So here we have a data file, and we're going to look at our tracking parameters, or marking parameters. These settings are explained in the video under data processing for mark tags, so refer to that video for more further explanation for what the individual settings do. Basically, there's two procedures for auto marking. There's one where it selects the data from the histogram based on the ranges that you specify. And then there's an auto marking algorithm that is used based on the detection settings that we have here. So let's see how the current settings do for this particular data file before we start a batch process. So in the period histogram, there is a button on the main toolbar that says View Tags to Automark. So this has the list of tags that mark tags will search for within a data file and apply the auto marking settings for trying to detect whether that tag is there or not. So from this dialog box, if you select the auto mark button, it goes through and searches for that tag, and if it's there, it will mark it. So here's a list of tags that have failed to be verified or found within the data file. So back to the detected tag list, if we want to see now what tags were actually marked or found within the file, we can scroll down, and wherever there's an entry that has an X next to it, that is a tag that the program found and marked. So if we zoomed in here, we notice that it did a pretty good job of detecting this tag, where the goal for auto marking is always to mark the first signal received from that tag and not select any signals after that, which usually are multipath. And so I did a pretty good job of marking the first signal for the primary signal and for the secondary signal of this double pulse tag. Here I did a pretty good job of detecting only the first transmission detected from the secondary pulse. And as we go through a list, we can see whether it marks any other tags, and see that for these specific tags, whenever we select an entry, it automatically scales the vertical axis to view those specific signals for that tag if it was there. And if it was there, much like the tag that it did find, you'll see the signals displayed in a horizontal fashion, meaning that those signals are displayed correctly with the vertical axis scaled to that specific period or ping rate of the tag. And for example, in the 8308, we're scaling the vertical axis, viewing signals from that tag if it was there. And since we did not see any vertical signals, then that tag was not found, or there were no signals detected from that tag for this data file. So we can go further down the list, and of course we can always look at specific tags it did not find, which just verifies that that tag indeed was not there. But we can also take a look and see other tags, whether they have been detected, and this did a pretty good job here. And for, so this looks like the settings are set correctly for this data file. So let's now close this file, and let's create our batch files. So under File, Batch Files, Create, we select this menu option, and then there is a folder called RAT that we're going to store or create the batch parameter files. So you can put in a prefix for the files that will be created, so like run1, and then what files will be generated. We can have a bookmark file, a tat file, and a tats file, and then what kind of bookmarks will be created within the bookmark file. So we'll just say save. So a dialog box comes up and shows you what files were created when we selected the batch create menu option. So let's take a look at some of these files. So in the RAT file folder, here are the files that we'll be processing, and here are the files that were created that will be used in the batch process. So if you look at the batch params.txt file, double click, and we're looking at a notepad. It's an ASCII file, so you can read it in any text editor. It basically writes to the file all the settings that you currently had set in mark tags. So for example, if we go down and first off we look at the tag list, that there is a batch params.tag file that it will use. So let's go back over to our folder location. If you click on the tag file, these are all the tags that will be used in the batch process, which is basically the same list within the program for the tag that you had selected for marking. So for batching, you don't necessarily have to have the project database open. It will use the whatever tag file that you supply to it. And so back to the batch params text file. And if we go down and look at some of the entries, they are exactly the same settings that we had set in our tag detection settings. They're just written out to the batch params file. So Since we have created this, how you run a batch process is essentially you go to the File, Batch File, Run option, and there you select the batch params file. Now, in doing so, what the program does is it reads in the file for setting the tag detection settings that will be used. Wherever you have this file and wherever you open it, it will then automatically go through each file that it finds and process it and store the results. So since we're opening up this batch params file inside this folder, it'll automatically open up each RAD file, do the processing, store the results, and go on to the next one. So we just have 3 that we're going to be processing in this batch example. So back to mark tags, you just select the file and say open. So now it's opening up the first file, processing all those tags, storing the results, then going on to the next file and doing the same procedure. Then gives you a dialog box saying it's finished. So let's look at the results from our batch process. Since we're in the file options, you already have the 2 options open here for TAT and BKM files. It'll automatically read in those TAT files that were created and BKM files in the batch process. So File, Detection, Open, and let's open up the first file. So it opens up the RAT file. It also opens up the TAT file, which down here in the status bar, it shows you the name of the TAT file. And one quick way to find out what tags were detected is go to the Summary Mark Tags dialog box. And this shows you all the tags that were automatically detected for that RAT file based on the settings that you had set in the batch file. So if you click on this entry, it sets the scale to view that data. And then we can see that it did indeed pick this up and mark the signals for that tag. It also placed bookmarks and the various bookmarks under the display bookmark options. These are the types of bookmarks that are created. So it creates a bookmark at the beginning of what it automatically detected in terms of signal. The last detected signal that it's marked, the nearest proximity, and then if there were multiple hydrophones, what hydrophone was the closest in terms of detecting that tag. And from here, it just seems that it just selected or found one tag. If you go in your list, you can always go through and manually verify or view to see if any other tags were automatically detected by the batch process. And it looks like just scrolling through that was the only. But you could do this just to verify the batch process to make sure it did not detect any tags that were actually there. So let's go to the next file and see how well it did. So open. Let's go to the 800 file. And here in the mark text summary, since we left it open, it automatically updated this dialog box. So we can click on each entry and it scales the vertical axis for viewing that tag's results. So here's 9022, 9148. So these are all the tags, again, that it automatically detected. And once again, you can always go up to the list of tags and verify whether any other tags are present or that it missed. But it does a pretty good job so far of detecting those tags for this file. And we can always go to the next file. It always sets the scale to the first tag that was detected in the list, and then you can select next files after that. And then also under the summary, there's a bookmark option that you can see for specific tags, the type of bookmark that was created, start, finish, proximity, nearest proximity. For this particular file, there was only one hydrophone, and it always places the bookmarks based on the signals that were given a tag ID. So any signal that has a tag ID associated will have a different color versus a signal in white which has not been assigned a tag ID. So here it's a very quick way of processing files. You can always go back, change your settings, and rerun the batch process in a very quick manner that you can process a number of data files in a very short period of time.